Today on the channel is a return of the Kyle Peterson Top 5, and today we take a trip under the sea to visit an all-time favorite in my Top 5 Masters Universe Merman countdown.
The spirit of Ultimate Warrior will run forever!
Here, welcome back to the channel for another edition of the Kyle Peterson Top 5, a weekly tradition on both YouTube channels. Of course, this being the Kyle Peterson 2.0 channel, we're doing a weekly Top 5 that is not wrestling related, and the wrestling ones, of course, over on the original channel. But this channel here, we're doing stuff with other toy lines, and that's where today goes as we dive in to Merman, one of my all-time favorite characters from the Masters of the Universe. And of course, Merman living that underwater life like a young Ariel Little Mermaid in some ways, but he's had a different story in different comic books, different series, things like that. You know, sometimes he's friends with Skeletor, sometimes he's been like enslaved by Skeletor. He just wants to have his people left alone sometimes. Just running the gamut of underwater life is really what that is at the end of the day. But an iconic character and a bit of a confusing character in later years for me, because when I close my eyes and I think of Merman, I always think back to, of course, the Filmation cartoon from way back in the day. We all remember that one. If you know He-Man, you know that cartoon. There's no doubt about it. And you know that original toy line. And that is such an iconic look, with some variants, some differences, and we'll talk about that as we ebb and flow through this countdown. But of course, this countdown, we're going to do it like we always do. We're going to start at number 5, work our way to number 1, and remember, this is my list. Put your list in the comments down below, and without further ado, let's get after it. Let's take a look at my top 5 Merman figures of all time. We kick off the top 5 Merman countdown, of course, at number 5. And number 5 is an interesting one, as I actually do not own this figure. Now, I, of course, owned it at one time in my life, and a lot of us own this one. And I would have to say it's probably the most sold Merman figure of all time. Well, what is it? We go all the way back to the original Mattel Masters of the Universe, of course, Merman figure with his famed corn on the cob sword. I always talk about it with Merman as a little kid. Of course, growing up in the Midwest, where corn is a big thing, I thought for sure this was a corn cob sword, and it was more barnacle sword under the water, but it was fun to pretend as a little kid there. But like I said, possibly the most iconic Merman figure of all time, but a weird dynamic there, and He-Man is alone in my mind, at least, as far as cartoons, where you get this as a cartoon, you get this as an action figure, especially back then. So similar but different is what we got, and this Merman to me was so iconic until later years, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in this very video here. And I guess Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Playmate figures, you can make the case kind of the same thing. Not quite what we saw on the TV screen, but close enough, and that's how it was with the Masters Universe. Guys like Beastman, guys like Merman, looked a little bit different in their figure form than what we saw on TV. They looked a little bit darker, I always thought, a little bit meaner in cartoon or in action figure form over cartoon, at least for me. But the first Merman figure I ever purchased, or I ever received as a gift, however you want to say it, as a little kid, was of course the original one, and that one held a lot of fun times for me. He was always one of the big bad guys of my toy playing days, right-hand man of Skeletor along with Beastman. Always enjoyed Merman, and that one set me off to my He-Man fandom, at least Merman fandom, in a lot of ways. So number 5, the original Merman. We continue on the list at number 4, and I talked about number 5 not really looking like the Filmation cartoon. Well, number 4 definitely changed that. What are we talking? We're going to Masters Universe. We're going to Masters Universe Classics Filmation edition here. So some similarities, but some differences. The corn cob sword stays, that's for sure, but the color maybe not as greenish, not as Stinkor-ish face-like, and I think Merman came before Stinkor, so it is what it is. But this is what we saw in the cartoon. Long way to get there, but this looks like Merman in all of his cartoon glory. Now, we know there's a Filmation line coming out from Mattel currently. We know we'll eventually get this in that line as well, and it will be a welcomed addition to that line. But a true yin and yang, and I go back and forth of what version of Merman I do like, and I'm not sure if this is my favorite one, the last one's a favorite, or maybe another one's favorite. we'll see what happens. But a very cool one. This Filmation line from the Masters Universe Classics was a very fun line. Still enjoy it to this day. Still enjoy this figure, and that's why it's at number 4 in my top 5 list. We've hit the halfway point of the countdown. You got your list together. Make sure you put it in the comments down below. Of course, don't forget to like this video, and don't forget to subscribe to this brand new YouTube channel. We got videos every single day over here, on top of all the videos on the other channels. There's something for everybody between both channels, there's no doubt about it. But now we're at the number 3 spot. We're at the number 3 Merman, and I guess gun to my head right now. Hopefully there's no guns to my head. But if we did have one, I think right now my favorite head of Merman would be on the Masters Universe Origins Merman, the 2nd edition here, the LOP version we'll call it. I absolutely love this head, and I remember the first time I ever saw this head, I was like, this is terrible, I don't like this, but talk about something just growing on you. There's just something special about this one. I just can't put my finger on it. I'm not exactly sure, but just a fabulous, fabulous look to Merman, and I'm starting to think when I close my eyes, this is turning into the Merman I think of, and I just don't know what that means. And Merman is a crazy one, a slippery one, really, out of the ocean, but he's got so many different looks, but at the end of the day, you know, each one of those is Merman. So definitely a chameleon in some instances here, but just a fabulous, fabulous version of Merman. Maybe not for everybody, but definitely for me. Love this head on here. Love the look on here. The green and yellow attack Oakland A's color doesn't hurt either, but just a fabulous one from the Masters Universe Origins line, and that's why it's coming in at number 3 in my top 5 countdown. Dangerously close to the end of the countdown as we're time for the number 2 Merman figure of all time, as voted by me, of course. And I believe this could be the last Merman figure we actually unboxed on the channels here. What Merman is it? Well, this one comes to us from Mondo Toys. This is Merman in all of his Mondo glory, an absolute game changer of a figure. One I missed out on back in the day, but I did pick this up at PowerCon. They had some new old stock for sale there, and I said, oh my gosh, I can't believe they have this. They have Keldor, they have Fakor. They had a lot of them, and I said, oh, now I'm going to have to get these, because basically the prices they had there were basically buy one, get one free compared to eBay prices. So I wasn't planning on spending all that money, but I had to if I ever wanted to get these at a reasonable price, and I had to have this Merman in my collection. Now, there is 2 versions of this. It's like I forget what the other version is. It's like a fancy artist one. And good brother, good friend of the channel, Jeff George, Jeff, good friend of the channel, he's got both of them, of course. He's all in the Mondo game. He's a Mondo expert, you could say, at some points. But he's got that artist limited edition one, and he thinks it is basically the best Merman figure of all time. I think that's what he told me. Or maybe it was the best Mondo figure of all time. Could even have been that one. He absolutely loves that one, and it is next level. I don't know if it's for me. I don't want to pay the price point, that's for sure. But I would love to have that in my collection. Maybe one day, play a little of that long game. It's a patented long game. We got to do it from time to time. But this is absolutely next level. Now, it is next level price point as well, so you got to take that into consideration. But very, very cool. It feels like Merman. We talked about it earlier. Merman, a guy that changes his look all the time, but at the core, at the base, it is Merman. And that's exactly where this one does sit. Looking great. The biggest corncob sword of all time going on here. He's got his trident staff looking good. He's got the green and yellow attack going on. He's got all kinds of seashells hanging from him. He's got an adjustable mouth, which is always a game changer. And then you got the big old eyes there. You got the crazy Merman head. Just a fabulous piece of art, really, is what this is at the end of the day. And I like this so much, I might ask my wife, Angie, if she'll let me put this in the living room. Can we put this in the living room? Can we put this up on the mantle? This is true art right here. And that's why it's coming in at number 2, the Mondo Merman. We got one left. What is it? Stay tuned. Like a young boys to men, we've come to the end of the road with the number 1 Merman figure of all time. Before we get to that, make sure you put your list in the comments down below. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and my other YouTube channel for videos every single day, as I always say, including top 5 lists, top 10 lists every single week on both channels. So there you go. But now we're down to it. We're down to the number 1 Merman figure of all time. Shout out to Merman, living that undersea life. And this one is one that stopped me dead in my tracks. And I've discussed this multiple times on the channel over the years. But when I was a young kid, a young college student, and the Masters Universe Classics line was beginning and rolling through, college kids, especially college Kyle, you don't have any money. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm going to school. I'm just paying the bills. I want to go party on a Friday, Saturday night, so I don't got a ton of money for toys. I was buying the Jakks Classic Superstars. I was all in on the G.I. Joe 25th anniversary, but one toy line I didn't get to collect that I really wanted to, that I just had to admire from afar, was the Masters of the Universe Classics line. Just an all-timer, and I remember seeing the releases, the online releases, just like, oh, I want these. Well, I righted that wrong about 2 years ago. I did purchase the entire collection all many years later, and I absolutely love that collection. Just an all-timer, just a moment in time that'll never be replaced in the Masters Universe world, at least for me. And what was the #1 figure? Well, of course, it does come from the Masters Universe Classics line. It is the Masters Universe Classics Merman, and like I said, this one, when it was announced, dropped me to my knees. I said, oh my gosh, Beastman did it, He-Man did it, Skeletor did it, so much stuff did it, but this Merman did it as well. It was just like childhood Merman, back in the saddle again like a young Aerosmith, just a cool figure, and it's like my childhood imagination got put into figure form is what this felt like. And out of all these Mermans, all great Merman figures. That Mondo one's like 10 times the price of this originally. I don't know about that, but you know what I mean. But sometimes nostalgia, sometimes special releases, seeing stuff for the first time, remembering where you were. I was working at a grocery store at the time when I saw this, and I'll just never forget looking on a cell phone too, which I didn't even have a cell phone. I had a buddy that had a cell phone. It's wild. I'll tell you my cell phone story one day. But just being like, I can't believe this is real. I can't believe this is real. And that's where I was with this one. Just an all-timer, just a great figure here. And that's why it's at #1, and I do love, this one is special, and I actually go back and forth. It did come with both versions of his head, which really brought it home for me here, and currently I go back and forth. I always have it displayed right here instead of away, because some days you just want to switch your Merman heads, and that's what I can do at a moment's notice if I want to here with this one. So a lot of fun with this Merman here. Definitely going to be #1 for me, and it's a wild one, this top 5 list, because a lot of people might think that childhood early adapter one, it was #5. A lot of people thought maybe that'd be #1, maybe vice versa, but no, it's about a lot of things, these lists, and it just forms into what I do like at the end of the day, and hopefully your lists are very similar to mine. It just takes nostalgia, takes where you were, moment in time, playability, what the figure is, all that together to bring you to the #1 spot. So there it is, Merman #1. Like I always say, put your list in the comments down below. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel or the other channel. Turn on the old notification bells. We got videos every single day. Don't forget about Patreon, early access to videos like this, bonus content, exclusive content, giveaways, you name it, go on for days. Patreon is the place to be. You can also support the channel being a member of the Patreon. You can also support the channel at ProWrestlingTees.com, search Kyle Peterson. And don't forget social media, SirPaul64 on the X, _Kyle_Peterson on Instagram and on Threads. So for the top 5 Merman figures of all time, I'm Kyle. See you guys all real soon.